Yo, what's up, guys? It's Josh Clow, one of the co-hosts of the Cleveland podcast. Today, we're going to go on into what the Cleveland Browns need to do going into next year after being eliminated from the playoffs in Week 16. Granted, they had no chance of making the playoffs. They needed every scenario to happen, which didn't happen, but they have a lot of promise next year. All right, let's go in. Um, First thing is you got to get a right head coach. Now there we'll be looking for a head coach. Greg Williams has done a fantastic and phenomenal job as being head coach, winning either 5 or 6 games with the Cleveland Browns after Hugh Jackson has left. They can go into one or two scenarios of the head coach. Is one, you keep Greg Williams. I believe that he has deserved an interview for the Cleveland Browns. Like I said, he's won 5 or 6 games. He has done a great job. They've kept it in the game every single game. Not a lot of blowouts. Um, they he's definitely turned that franchise around just as an interim head coach. So you don't see that a lot. I think there's only one other interim head coach that actually performed well and actually led a team to a playoffs. I can't remember. I think it was from the Raiders, but I can't truly remember any of that. It was, I think, before my time. Um, so yeah, Greg Williams does deserve an interview, and if no other candidates for coaching um, come up, they should hire him. Now the second scenario is when I say no other head coach comes up. Bruce Arians has announced that he would want to coach for the Cleveland Browns and only for the Cleveland Browns. We all know how Bruce Arians is. I mean, he was the head coach of the Cardinals. He had that one great year with Carson Palmer. They went 14-2 to the NFC Championship game. He's he has coached a lot of good quarterbacks, including Carson Palmer and Big Ben. So he's familiar of working with quarterbacks, definitely young quarterbacks. But he knows how to work with the old quarterbacks too, which could be good. If Baker Mayfield gets injured, but to have a very young quarterback like Baker Mayfield, who is very intelligent and phenomenal, he takes risks, and like he said, he's a dangerous man. This is a guy that can definitely exceed and excel Baker Mayfield into a top elite quarterback coming down later on in the season, maybe even next year or his third year into the season. He could be a force to be reckoned with as a quarterback. Could be the next Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady, Peyton Manning type of caliber quarterback. So those are the two coaches they should really heavily look into and hire one of those two guys and no one else. Moving on to number two, I think they need to beefing up that wide receiver group. The wide receiver group has played pretty decent. A lot of young guys, Higgins, Callaway, and Jarvis Landry, but they don't really have a number one wide receiver in that group. Um, I mean, you can say that Jarvis Landry is the number one wide receiver, but they need a guy like Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, AJ Green, Antonio Brown, something like that to actually go and be that playmaking type of guy. Someone's going to get you 14, 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns a season. Someone's to essentially change the game. That one catch could change the whole game. That one touchdown can change the whole game. So that's something that they need. Granted, they do have a very young wide receiver group that could possibly transform one of those guys, but if there is an elite wide receiver going into free agency, they should go after them or trade for one. I think AJ Green they should trade for. Why? The Bengals aren't going anywhere. We all know that. They need a new head coach. They need a new quarterback. They need a whole new defense. So I would try to trade for AJ Green if I was the Cleveland Browns. If not, try to trade for like Juju Smith, who's playing on elite level but is very young. Might worth a lot, but it might pay out at the end, kind of something like how the Dallas Cowboys did with Amari Cooper. You paid a first round pick, well, he's playing like a first round pick. So some things are worth it if you take the risk, and that's what John Dorsey has been doing. This last year, he has taken major risks, and you can see what's happened. I mean, they've won 7 games, I believe. So this is a very good group of guys who can play extremely well. But they do need that number one wide receiver to help move the sticks more and make that playmaking ability on the field. Now, third is that defensive line. I think they need to beefing up that defensive line a little bit more. They're in the middle of the pack in the NFL at only 35 sacks. I mean, it's not terrible. They're averaging about 2 sacks a game, but you can always beefing that up. 2 sacks a game is one sack every 2 quarters. You want to try to beefing that up and make it up to 3 or 4 sacks a game. Sacks are going to help win games. Defense is going to win games. So Miles Garrett is leading the team with, I believe, 12 and a half sacks. So, and the next guys, I don't remember his name, but it's only at 5.5 sacks. So there's not a lot of guys. I mean, there's a lot of guys getting sacks, but there's not a lot of guys having a lot of sacks. So you got to beefing that up. You got to draft either an elite defensive lineman, or you go after the free agency and see who's out there. But if you can pressure opposing quarterbacks, you can definitely, that's how you're going to cause more turnovers, which the team is very good. They're a top five team in the turnover rate, but in the interception and fumbles. So when you pressure the quarterback, you produce that turnover. You get Baker Mayfield having more chances to get the ball down into the end zone. You score more points. That defensive line can help that team really make it or break it into the postseason next year. And if you have the number one defense in the league, somewhere where they have the potential to be a number one defense in the league, they can really be a force to be reckoned coming into the playoffs next season. Definitely with like the Ravens, who has number one defense right now. Obviously, the Ravens defense is getting a little old, despite where the Cleveland Browns defense, they're one of the youngest teams in the league. So they have the potential to be one of the greatest defenses in past history, something like the 1985 Bears, or the Bears this season, who's shut down the electrifying Rams to only 6 points. So they have the potential to be a top three defense, but that defensive line needs to be beefing up. So that's what the Browns need to do really next year. They don't have a lot of things they need to change, but little quirks they need to fix, because those little quirks can make it or break it. Something like the Patriots, Belichick always fixed the little quirks each and every year. That's why they get 12 wins, first or second seed every year. That's what the Browns need to start doing. And whoever's the new head coach, either Greg Williams or Bruce Arians, someone, definitely Bruce Arians, who knows how to get to the playoffs, knows how to fix those quirks. For Greg Williams, he's going to start learning. But if they do keep Greg Williams, I know he'll beefing up that defensive lineman, as he's a defensive coach. But those are what the Browns need to do. I have the Browns being a Super Bowl contender coming into next season, but they need to fix those three things. You got to get an elite head coach, you got to get an elite wide receiver, you need to get a better defensive line, and that's how you can essentially push that team into a force to be reckoned team in the AFC North and in the AFC as a whole. Um, so if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. I've already made a rant about and stuff on the Miami Dolphins. If you guys want to check that out, I'll probably be doing more of these on these teams that have been underperforming the last couple of years. Like I said, with the Dolphins and the Browns, I might do like the Bills or the Jets or something like that coming up next. But yeah, so subscribe to our channel so you won't miss those. You also won't miss our podcast. I will have to say we are not doing a podcast this week due to the holiday season and the work schedule. But coming into the new year in January, that first Thursday, we will definitely have a new podcast. I believe it's either January 2nd or January 3rd. But until then, I hope you guys had a happy holidays, and hope you guys have a happy new year. Have a good week.